Hey everybody, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to give a big thank you to my friend Luke Burrows, who referred me to today's guest. Luke has an amazing podcast called Raising Consciousness, which I highly recommend you check out, and you'll find a link to that in the description below. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Rich Ahlers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Breakthrough. Today I'm joined by Rich Ahlers. He is a healthcare professional, entrepreneur, and lifestyle educator with over 2 decades of experience in healthcare, health tech, integrative health, mind-body medicine, and human nutrition. And he has also started a service called Vital Habits, which I'd love to get into. Welcome, Rich. It's great to meet you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Happy to be on. Excited to dive into some of these topics today.
Absolutely. So this is going to be all about health and wellness and how to just live better, basically, which is what I'm all about. So maybe you can get started just by saying a little bit about yourself. What led you to start Vital Habits, and what is your mission?
Yeah, sure. It's a complicated one, but I'll try to keep it, short and sweet. But I spent about 15 plus years in conventional healthcare. What inspired that was my father having a heart attack in his mid 50s and then ultimately developing Parkinson's disease about, oh gosh, I think it's like 15 years later or something like that. Or actually less than that, 10 years later. And in parallel to that, my mother in her adult life was pretty unhealthy individual, and not by choice, I think. Right? I think there was a lot of components to it, but she struggled with weight and health for many years, and ended up passing away about a year and a half ago. Um, and then also like my own health journey, I think, which is the most sticky to all this, is that I went through my own health challenges with ultimately burnout, stress, anxiety, and bouts of depression. And um, at that moment, it was kind of like the pivotal point for me to look at my parents' situation, my situation, and I started to question everything that I knew and learned up until that point about conventional health. Right? Like, take these pills, they fix you, and that's the way out, and that's what your life is going to be, and ultimately you'll just end on a bunch of pills the rest of your life, and then have a low quality of life and then pass away. And so at that moment, I questioned everything. And I said, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way more natural way to do this to achieve optimal health. And so that's how it all came about.
Awesome. So then, so what is exactly that Vital Habits is all about? Is it like helping people who are particularly entrepreneurs dealing with the high stress environment like you have in the past?
Yeah, so I specifically work with entrepreneurs, working professionals that are at a high level, like C-suite level or senior executives, because um, people in those positions seem to be the ones that burn out the most, and because they constantly have their foot on the gas, they're putting their health at the very low point of their priorities, and they're prioritizing money and wealth and success, everything else ahead of that. And so ultimately, that's where I find, a lot of the things that I teach the most benefit in the workforce or in life or in relationships is for the ones that are constantly grinding, running businesses, working, multiple jobs or companies. So yeah, and I focus on burnout and stress and anxiety because ultimately the stress and burnout is where a lot of the unhealthy habits kind of connect. So if we're not aware of the chronic stress that we're under and the pressure that we're under, and then how that triggers emotions and belief systems that ultimately lead us to make choices about what we do in our health, like over consuming or drinking or using toxins to escape, or even doing other things like gambling your money away. Right? All these things are reactions to deal with stress, and they're ways to get dopamine hits. And so, yeah, Vital Habits is a way to kind of reawaken and reemerge people to reclaim their health by reclaim their health and reclaim their life by integrating these holistic principles back into their routines, which make us human, honestly.
Why do you think there is such a prevalence of burnout and stress and anxiety in today's world? I know that you focus mostly on like business people, but
Mhm.
to be honest, like my wife is an elementary school teacher, for example, and it is very common for teachers to go on burnout, and it's almost like
Yeah,
normalized, you know?
yeah.
And I find that to be very unfortunate. Do you have any insight into why you think that is? the case in today's world.
Yeah, sure. And let me be clear too. Like when I say working professionals, it could be anybody.
Hmm.
It could be anybody like your wife or someone else that's dealing with life pressures. Uh, so I don't want to like discount that. Like you need to be running your own business to be, someone that
Right.
works with me. Um, but I'll be honest. I'll be really blunt, and I've been more vocal about this lately. Is that, and I found this out in my own life because I was running two businesses and working full time, and I had a newborn kid, and that's when it all kind of came crumbling down for me. The problem is that the biggest problem is that our modern lives are not synergistic with how we were designed. Working crazy hours, hustle life culture, how much can you fit in your day? Prioritize your tasks and get focused and crush your hours. Like all of these things are actually not very human. Sitting behind your desk, sitting inside all day, um, you know, sitting in front of tech and screens, and it's not normal, right? So the modern lifestyle is actually at the very core root of why people are more sick and more burned out today. The second layer of that is that we've now created more and more products out of convenience to keep people living that life. So forget about making your own meals and spending 2 hours with your family. Go buy these boxed foods or packaged foods that show up at your house, or quick processed things that you could eat on the go so you could keep working more hours and keep making that money. That's the problem. That's ultimately the issue with our modern society. And when you look at the Eastern worlds, when you look at kind of the European culture in some of those places, you could see kind of how they prioritize life over work and health over money. That's more in line with how we should live and look and feel, but we're not. We're prioritizing money and success and the American dream, and we're sacrificing everything, including our health.
So it's more of a Western culture problem than anything else.
I would say so, but then you definitely have it in places like China and Korea and Japan where it's more and more prevalent, right? Like in our modern conveniences have ensued into their communities where we're popping up McDonald's and Starbucks and everything. I mean, I was just in Italy not too long ago, and Italy is a very big culture, obviously on food, but also coffee. It's a
Mhm.
huge coffee culture. Well, guess what? None of them like the fact that there's Starbucks in their communities. They poo-poo it. They don't like it because what Starbucks signifies is the fast, expensive, Americanized version of a coffee, whereas they care more for the more dolce vita, more piano piano kind of lifestyle where it's slow and steady. Enjoy your coffee, sit down, chat with a friend or a coworker or a family member. Sip and relax, enjoy that moment. So it's just, yeah, it's clear that other societies are also picking up on this stuff, but for the most part, I think it's more of a Western world issue. You know,
Yeah, it seems like that type of lifestyle, like you mentioned, relaxed and kind of easygoing, is something that we tend to reserve for vacations. So you'll experience that 2 weeks out of the year, 3 weeks out of the year, and then it's back into the hectic
yep,
lifestyle once again.
yep. Vacations are like more of an escape than anything else.
Yeah.
And there was a famous quote that people have passed around. I think I've seen on social media and stuff, which is very true. If you think you're depressed and then you go on vacation and you're not depressed. You have a lifestyle issue. You
Hmm.
know, that's what happens when most people go on vacation. All of a sudden, everything kind of just dissipates, and it's like, oh, freedom. Yeah, because you're not checking emails and Slack messages and Messenger and Facebook and Twitter and and being on screens and meetings and shoveling down food. Like you're living. You're living how humans are supposed to live.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
On your website, you list 8 pillars of health, and I was hoping that we could get into those and talk a little bit about each one. And I think though the first one just flows naturally from what we were just speaking about. It's nature, and as a segue from what we mentioned about going on vacation and feeling that sense of I can relax and everything. Nature is one of the easiest ways to achieve that, and I know
Yeah.
firsthand because fortunately I was able to this past weekend spend some time up north in the countryside. My family has a cottage up there, and every time I go there, I just feel a weight off of my shoulders. It's so therapeutic for me. It's out in the middle of nowhere, pretty much, surrounded by trees and forest, and there's just something so purifying about being there. So, what kind of insights do you have about nature and I guess the lack of contact with nature that a lot of us have because of our, city dwelling lifestyles
Mhm.
and what we can do about it?
Yeah, so there's many layers to this. So the first part is we came from nature. So we are beings of nature. The other thing is that nature vibrates at its frequency, right? It has its own natural frequency. There's an earth energy frequency. There's a natural frequency from the sounds and the wind and the birds and the trees moving. This frequency has been shown studying, right? People study this and research that look at when people forest bathe, they're able to, because they're exposed to these things, they're able to lower stress responses, heart rate, respiration rate, blood pressure, even blood viscosity, which is tied to cardiovascular health. So nature holds a very powerful key component that jives with our energy because we're part of it. When we disconnect from it, um, illness can ensue because we're forgetting to connect back to that, and that could be from being out in nature or getting our food from nature or even our water sources. Right, all of these things are tied to nature. Um, the other thing is that there's a um, there's a specific compound that's released that this is something I read in research. Like, obviously I didn't come up with this, but I found it in my discoveries as I was trying to understand, like, why does this all work? But it's called phytoncide, and the phytoncides are released. They're chemicals released from the trees that actually boost your immunity. They boost your well-being and your immune function. So getting out in nature is actually directly tied to rejuvenating your health, which is just bananas, right? And that's probably scratching the surface, I think, of what we really know in research and science of why nature works well. But the one thing I would probably say to people is when you strip away all the complications of trying to nuance it and figure it out, what's common sense? Think about common sense. Like, well, our food comes from nature. We engage with nature. We're made up of mostly water. Uh, Frequency has been studied many times, right? The sounds of things are directly tied to responding to our cells respond to those sounds. This is why people listen to binaural beats and certain wave frequencies when they meditate or they chant or they hum in yoga. It's all tied to nature. And so, like, I look to the East a lot in this, like TCM, Qigong, Buddhism, all these things, because they're all tied to the same things, like the premise of these natural things that are in our environment to heal us.
You mentioned is it TCM? Is that
Yeah, traditional Chinese medicine.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So it works more on a holistic uh, basis than individual organ basis.
Okay. Very contrary to our,
Modern conventional
Western
way.
modern medicine, which is very
Exactly.
specialized. You have a problem with your foot, you go to the foot doctor,
Exactly.
etc.
Exactly. And if I could touch upon that,
Sure.
because I worked in that world for many years, that's a big problem with our healthcare system. Is that they can poo-poo TCM as an alternative medicine. The reality is it's been around way longer. It's been used and studied way longer. And the reality is, when you look at organ functions, they don't work independently. They work as a unified body. So if one thing is off, another thing goes off. So if I have issues with my weight, that may then turn into sleep issues, breathing issues, that turn into hormone dysfunction, that could also turn into cardiovascular events, or even mental health problems. They're all intertwined. They don't work as like, let me fix your heart and everything goes away. No, no, no. Like, it's all one unit that you have. It's like a fine balance, right, between all of these things.
Right. And I imagine that extends also to our surroundings because we are part of a larger unit and we're
Yeah.
influenced by the things around us. So some of our health conditions might be exacerbated by stuff in our surroundings that we might
Yeah.
not even be aware of, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Deepak Chopra talks about this and other people, right, where they talk about the macrocosm and the microcosm, and that your microbiome and your microcosm is part of the macrocosm, and the macrocosm influences things in our own system. So, like to your point, like where are we living? How are we living? What are we exposing ourselves to? Even the relationships and energy that we're around can dictate how we feel, how we think, and how we act, and ultimately that can, turn into good health or bad health, right? So, yeah, you're spot on.
So just to close up on the nature topic, I know that you've spoken about that it's not necessarily you don't need to become a hermit and live out in the woods in order to reap the benefits of nature. There are small things that you can do that will go a long way, such as standing on grass with your bare feet, sitting under a tree, things like that. Just small amounts of exposure regularly can make a huge difference. And to share like a quick anecdote, I work out with a friend of mine, a buddy. Every Saturday we go to a park. We meet up at a park and we do our kettlebell workout.
Awesome.
And we always are amazed every time that it feels so much better working out outdoors than it does indoors in a
Yes.
gym. And we
Yes.
we have more energy, we have more power in our movements, and it just feels good. So we directly attribute that to being outside, like, the fresh air, the sunlight in the morning and everything.
Yeah. So there was actually a recent study that was done that looked at people. I think it was walking, just like ambulation, if I'm remembering correctly. But they looked at people walking inside versus walking outside, and what they found out was there was like an full benefit of cognition, mental performance, mood state because people are outside. Now, I'm speculating because I haven't read it in its entirety, but to your point, it's for a few reasons. One, you're connecting with the earth, which is a frequency connection. And I know some people that they don't understand this, so they go, that's nonsense. But the earth frequency. The second thing is that sun is one of the biggest energy generators for our mitochondria, our energy ATP, our mood function, for serotonin from vitamin D synthesis. So, like, when you're outside in those environments, and then the color spectrum, like the green color spectrum that you get, is actually a relaxing color spectrum. So, it's no wonder, right? When you look at these studies, or when you're saying like you're outside, or when I'm outside, I feel better. Like, once you start to think about why, like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Like, I'm out getting these things that are naturally changing how my body functions.
So on the nature note, but moving
Yeah.
into the next pillar, which let's talk about movement because they often go hand in hand. When you're outside, you're often moving, whether it's hiking, walking, or whatnot. And movement is such a crucial thing for anybody, and
Yeah.
something that is not emphasized enough probably in modern culture. We have relatively many of us have sedentary lifestyles. Our jobs
Yeah.
require us to sit at a desk in front of the computer for many of us. So, how important is movement? It might sound like an obvious question, but and what can we do to incorporate more of it into our lives for those of us who struggle?
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't answer your last question, so I'm gonna answer it real quick.
Sure.
If people want a simple, quick way of getting out in nature, and you kind of touched upon it, go stand in the grass for 10 minutes and get some sunlight on you. Go to the beach and step in the water. The water is the most conductive ionic charge that you can get, like getting in the water, or laying in the grass. Like, these are quick things that you could do. You don't need to be like walking barefoot like like I do for 3-4 miles. So movement. Yeah, it goes without saying, right? We're beings that are meant to move. I mean, we have legs. We walk on them. We're supposed to be doing that. And I think one of the things I want to say, because being someone who's in the health and wellness world, I'm inundated with constant social media stuff that gets pounded. Do this, do that, do this exercise. This is the panacea. The reality is, the biggest secret hack to movement, the best form of movement for every human being, is walking. You want to burn fat? Walk. You want to clear your mind? Walk. You want to lower stress, increase heart, cardiovascular health and metabolic function? Walk. You want to help bone density and proprioception and balance and coordination? Walk. Like, walking is legitimately what we're designed to do. And I always equate, like, this is why I called it vital habits too, right? Because some of it's tied to like the ancestral notions, right? Which is, people people were out farming and tilling the land and being outside and building and constructing things like homes and textiles, and gathering and foraging these things. And then we were migrating. We were migrating to new places to live and seeking out new food and new dwellings because of maybe climate shifts or food lack. So walk. Like walk is just walk. Like if you want to start anything and you're a sedentary person and you feel like it's overwhelming to hit workouts and functional training and all this stuff, just go walk. Just start walking and things in movement, motion, stay in motion. Um, but other than that, yeah, like movement is a crucial process for actual bodily functions. So the lymph system doesn't have a pump. So when we walk, we actually stimulate lymph. And lymph is tied to our immune system. So it helps purge and detoxify the body and move things out of the body and the bloodstream to cleanse it out. So moving lymph is really important. So you got to move your body. The other thing is that when we move our body in different ways, we actually can purge emotions and stored energy and stress. So this is why people are like, man, I feel so good after a run or a workout. It's like, yeah, because the more you're twisting and contorting and moving and shaking and pressing and pulling, you're discharging energy. You're discharging emotional stores and stress that are in the fascia and in the body. So moving is a natural way to de-stress, and studies look at this time and time again, right? It's great to do. There's a lot of conflicting things out there right now, and like the science always changes, and then everyone's kind of moving in one direction, like do strength training, don't do cardio, do cardio, don't do strength training, do yoga. In my opinion, if you're someone that doesn't work out, just do something. And when you pick something that you can do easily that you're interested in. Don't do what other people tell you to do, because if you're not interested in it, guess what? You're probably not going to keep doing it. And then you're back to like that, probably that, sedentary behavior or whatever, you've been doing before. So, but yeah, movement, it's so powerful. It's good to build muscle. It's good to build strength, but it's also really good for your mental health.
I think there's a perception out there, maybe this is increased by social media, that something as simple as walking isn't enough to move the needle for people, because you go online, and I guess it's hard to become a social media influencer through walking. You have to be doing extreme things, and
Yeah.
everybody tends to have their secret sauce for the
Yeah.
way they look, and stuff like that. But is it really that simple as just get out there and walk, whatever it is, 10,000 steps? I know that that's a somewhat of an arbitrary number that people like to
Yeah.
use, but
Yeah. I think it's
you
like
know,
8,000 is the real, yeah. There's two like I have my beliefs on this. There's two parts to this in my mind. I think the first one is the exercise has to meet the individual where they are. So someone like me may be very different than someone who's maybe 40 pounds overweight or more, right? Um, so I think it needs to meet the individual where they are. I think walking is one of the most easy, free, most accessible things you could do to move the needle in your health. Now, I'm not talking about like having eight pack abs and having immaculate body composition, because that's, again, totally something different. But when we talk about just actual health, and when I mean actual health, I mean like biomarker, diagnostic testing, do lab work and see how walking impacts you, amazing bang for your buck. If there are people that have already moved, like they're somewhat fit and they want to, you know, bring themselves to the next level, then yeah, maybe you do want to do HIIT. Maybe you do want to do kettlebell. Maybe you do want to do yoga for flexibility and whatever, right? So again, I think it meets people. It needs to meet people where they're at. The second thing, which probably will make me not very attractive in the influencer world, is the real honest truth is that in the Western world, we live on extremes. And the real secret lies in the middle, which is not sexy to people. So when you look at social media, it's like you kind of said, like you alluded to, do this one thing and do it every day and it's going to change your life, and like work out hard like this and look at me sweating and throwing these weights around, like, or running 20 miles a day. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, from a clinical standpoint, that doesn't go well for people's health over time. The pounding, the inflammation, the allostatic load, when you start to do diagnostic testing, chances are, and you actually see some of these people talk about it, chances are there's hormonal imbalances, there's mental health issues, there's inflammatory markers that are raised, because anything in excess doing nothing or doing everything is not going to lead to balance. It's the middle road. It's like, do, strength train a couple days a week, walk a couple days a week, maybe go for a run, do some yoga or stretching. Like, find the balance between everything is like really where you really where you need to be.
That makes perfect sense. Something else I've become pretty fascinated with is movement with the for the purpose of healing.
Yeah.
And it's not something that's overly spoken about, I find. For myself personally, about a year and a half ago, I was started doing some running because I was training to do a 10K race, and I discovered that I had knee pain after running a few kilometers, so I got kind of like bummed out about that. But then I got into the gym and I started doing squats, and then when I started running again, my knee pain had disappeared.
Mm,
And I guess with the movement of the squats or the weight, whatever, I strengthened my knee, healed up something that was nagging me, and I haven't had any pain since. So,
yeah.
there's little things like that that you discover if you try different things.
Yeah.
But What can you tell me about healing the body through movement?
Love this one because this is like the big stuff I did during the Wiseman project, which I didn't really mention here, but we did men's retreats for many years, doing mind body medicine, healing work, right?
Hmm.
Which is through movement as medicine. Um, yeah. So I think number one, as a martial artist, lifelong martial artist, I'm a big fan of dynamic movements before exercise. So static stretching, in my opinion, while it's nice, uh, it doesn't prepare the muscle for action. It actually calms the muscle. So I think like dynamic movement, like you said, like if you're doing a deep squat and you're kind of greasing that area of mobility, you're bringing blood flow there by breathing in the O2 and getting oxygen down to the knee. So that helps the knee function, right? So I think compound movements, natural movements like lunges and squats, and things like pushing and pressing and crawling and climbing are really good for the body. But in more specific detail about healing movements, I believe in things like shaking, rebounding, body tapping, EFT, which is emotional freedom techniques, um, stretching, breathing, and twisting. Those are all really good healing mechanisms. A lot of them come from the Eastern culture, right? So qigong, um, and Ayurveda yogic type practices, right? Because they're very similar. So I have like a qigong brush I use that's a bamboo, and I'll tap it all over my body. There's pressure points that you could touch, like here. So like if you have a running mind, this is the yin tang point. It's a pressure point. If you press there and hold it, for let's say 30 to 60 seconds, it actually calms the racing mind. So there are ways to tap into body healing through movement and techniques, like that, right? So another thing that I do almost daily is the shaking or rebounding. So if people want to get like a trampoline or just jump up and down on the ground for 3 to 5 minutes, that helps discharge negative energies. It helps center the body and the mind. It releases it actually releases trauma. There's been a lot of studies in work from mind body medicine in third world countries from trauma. And I actually trained with Mind Body Medicine Institute that basically does this work day in and day out. And so it helps people discharge really deep traumas from the shaking and the tapping. So those are ways that you could really heal the body, heal injuries, heal, even the psychological components that are stored in the mind or in the body. The other thing that I would say is that when different, and I talk about this a lot when I used to do my retreats and even in my private coaching work, is that when we go through experiences of stress, and it doesn't matter, or traumas, and it doesn't need to be these big things, it could be little things like work related events or relationship related events or things at home or whatever, you store that. So the minute you have that experience, the brain processes it and stores it. And then when it stores it, you have a physiological reaction. It goes somewhere. So this is why you see people like get tense in the shoulders, pain in the neck, pain in the lower back, because the emotion at time and time again, that allostatic load will get deployed into the body if it's not being discharged or dealt with. And so over time, like I said, people end up with this stuff in their fascia and their muscle. And and I've seen this real time when I do this with people, and even myself when I would do it, when you start to have people do breathing techniques and holding certain postures, and they're starting to breathe and move in these postures, they get really emotionally charged. They could start to cry. They could start to feel very sick. Um, they could feel uncomfortable and uneasy and anxious because that emotion is being kind of snapped out of that area and brought to the surface to be released because that's what it wants. So yeah, so mind body medicine, movement work around healing is really powerful stuff. Um, I actually did transformative breath work. I don't know if you know what that is.
I've heard of it, but maybe you can just elaborate for those who haven't.
Yeah, so transformative breath work is where you're basically lying down and there's music going, there's energetic music going, like chanting and whatever. It's whatever they're gonna use to facilitate. Excuse me. And then they guide you through this practice of, you know, what may come up for you and how you're gonna do, and they kind of walk you through it. But basically you're doing breathing patterns the whole time and you're laying there. And you're basically allowing, I think the key word is you're allowing these things to come to the surface. You don't know what they're going to be, they're just going to come to the surface. And when they do, you must breathe to allow them to continue to kind of purge. And the more you breathe and go and let these purge, the more they'll release from your body, and you'll obviously feel lighter or feel like less angst. So when I did it, my mother had just passed like not too long before that, and holy heck, man, like some of the deep stuff that came up for me was just, in the moment it's hard, but like the release was so powerful that when I came out of that, I was like smiling ear to ear with just joy and contentment, which I wasn't previously. Obviously, I was dealing and grieving. Um, and then I've done my own sessions even in my own home to purge, and it's very powerful stuff for people that if they want to release that stuff to do transformative breath work.
Wow, that's a couple thoughts on that. If you've I don't know if you've ever had like an anxiety attack or anything like that, but
I have.
it kind of sounds like inducing that type of thing through breathing where if you just break down and then have a good cry or whatever, usually you feel much better afterwards. It's just
Mhm.
that the accumulation is so intense that it puts you through that awful process, but then once it's kind of out of your system, it actually does feel better. So is there any connection to that?
So I think what's happening is you're tapping into emotions that we put away because we don't want to deal with them. It's a human instinct. Like we don't want to go through pain, so we store it in the subconscious. You're not inducing a panic attack per se. I would say for some people, their emotions, their traumas, their experiences are different than everybody else's. So they may have a harder time or an easier time depending on what they're going through in that moment. So you're not inducing panic, but what you're doing is you're allowing the body to relax by naturally, like by just deep breathing. And you're basically going into a parasympathetic state to calm the body, which when you calm the body, it allows it to release. When we're tense, we're constricting, if you think about it that way. If we're tense and we're holding back or we're pressing and suppressing, we're not allowing these things to move freely. When we let go and relax, like when you're in a massage or things like that, what happens? You're allowing the muscle to relax, you're allowing the emotions to let go. And that's what happens. It comes up. But the reaction to your point at the end of it, the resolution is quite the same. You get this sense of euphoria and release and lightness because you're allowing that to be channeled and released from your body. What one thing I think is important to talk about that's kind of related to this is that a lot of animals, not all animals, but a lot of animals shake in nature. If anybody ever watches animals shake in nature, they're shaking because they're discharging the fight or flight. They're disconnecting from the fight or flight trigger from being chased. So if they get chased by an animal or a threat, you after that event, you see them kind of like shake out. It's a natural pattern for them because if they live in a stress state all day long, it's like they may have a heart attack, whatever. But they're disengaging so they can live normally, and they don't even think about that threat that just happened. They move on with their lives. Humans don't do that. Humans don't shake; they store.
That's so
So this is why
fascinating.
like breathing and twisting and shaking, things rebounding. These are ways that we can simulate, the same thing, and helps us to kind of discharge the energy. What's crazy about this is if you look at Qigong methodology, there's a system called Ba Duan Jin. It's the 8 brocade of silk. One of the methods in the Chinese 8 brocades is going up on your ball of your toes and dropping on your heels. That is very similar because you're discharging the energy, you're shaking the body. It improves lymph, but you're also shaking emotion and stress out.
That is amazing. I never thought
Yeah,
about that with regard to animals. But
yeah.
yeah, it does. I mean, there's
Think
a
about
reason.
dogs and cats and birds, and I mean, you look at all of them.
Sometimes dog pets do strange things that you're just like, well, like, why are they doing that? And there's always a reason. They wouldn't be doing it if there was no purpose to it.
Right, right.
I want to go back to something that occurred to me when you were speaking about rebounding and those like twisting movements. It occurred to me that I just had the vision of like kids jumping on a trampoline, like that's stuff that they love to do, right?
Yeah,
And I feel like a lot of those movements are things that kids are naturally drawn to or naturally do.
yeah.
Am I onto
Oh,
something there?
100%. And I think it's also because they're probably, without even knowing it, they're craving to shake off energy in some way. Kids are so high energy. Like,
Yeah.
it's funny you say this because well, number one, I believe that if anybody wants to find the real key to health, uh, see the world through a child's eyes. Be a kid, be a kid. Like, think about how you were as a kid. But also, I remember going to the trampoline parks indoors when COVID happened because we were trying to find things to do. And I remember getting off the trampoline after like 30 minutes, like, man, I feel so good. And I knew the science, but I was like, this is why. Like, I feel so good about this. So I think kids do, like, I think they gravitate towards these activities, not even knowing why they're being pulled to them, you
Yeah,
know?
I think there's just a lot of natural things that they do, kind of like animals in a sense, because they don't understand why they're doing it, but they do them.
It's just instinctual. They're interacting with the environment. Like you're thinking, like I want to go climb that. I want to go jump off of that. I
Right.
want to go hop on that. That feels good to me. Like,
Whereas for us, it's kind of been deprogrammed out of us because there are customs that you need to follow to be regarded as a competent member of society in a lot of
a
cases.
good modern human. You must be a
Exactly.
good modern human. You must wear these professional clothes and say these things and act this way.
Right. So
Don't be an animal.
those impulses have kind of been conditioned out of us, I guess.
I think so. I very much think so.
I think that
Some of it to kind of domesticate us and be civilized, but
right.
I think some of that had a negative effect without intention, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good way to move into the nutrition pillar. And I want to start by continuing to talk about kids because I have 2 young kids, and something that I find to be quite disturbing actually is when you go out to a restaurant, and particularly restaurants that are classified as family restaurants, right? And you look at the kids menu, and it's just atrocious.
It's worse
It's
than the adult menu.
it's far worse than the adult
It's
menu,
so
and you have to
ridiculous.
go out of your way to ask, like, can I have some vegetables, added
Yeah,
to this plate of fries and nuggets?
yeah.
It's disgusting, and it completely turns us off of going to eat out most of the time. Um, which, it's probably a good thing ultimately, but I just
Yeah.
don't understand why society has chosen to go in this path with regards to kids, like not setting them up for continued success as they grow up, and not nurturing better habits for them.
So I grew up in an Italian household, very traditional. My mother cooked all the time. I was fortunate enough to like have that upbringing. Did they buy us fast food once in a while? Of course. Did we eat it? Of course. Did I feel like crap? Of course. Like, and I loved it because it's they make these things so hyper palatable
Yeah.
and cheap that you can't help yourself. It just signals the brain to want more, just like candy and sugar. But yeah, it bothers us too. We don't go out to eat very often at all. And when we do, we try to navigate a place that has a good menu before we get there. And a lot of times we don't even let them bring out the kids' menu. Do my kids eat chicken fingers and french fries? Yes. My kids are not going to break if they have a bad thing once in a while, but we don't advocate it. We don't make it at home. We don't make it a mainstay in their diet. I do think there's a slippery slope for people to demonize foods in front of their children, because if you do that, you could be creating some psychological effects downstream that could have a very opposite effect to their dietary habits
Hmm.
because they're going to rebel. So we try to walk that line with them where it's like, you can have this with this broccoli, salad, whatever, or a good protein. Um, or, we do it once in a while, so it's not a big deal. But yes, I think the child menus are a problem. I think they're another one of those modern conveniences that are killing our younger generations out of cheap, fast, palatable foods. And they resonate because fast food does the same thing. So it's all quick, convenient, cheap, fried stuff that makes people feel good when they eat it and they want it more. Um, but nutrition, if I could speak about this, I think there's a Buddhist, a monk guy that teaches qigong that I follow that says it very eloquently. He says, to simplify things, it's lifestyle, nutrition, and breath. And I believe that. Like, if you look at my core pillars, that's kind of what I'm talking about, because lifestyle encapsulates everything. Nutrition is not only important for health in general, the foods we eat have a direct result on the chemical, cell, hormone parts of our body, even our neurotransmitter production for mental health, our, our detoxification pathways, our inflammatory responses. Nutrition is so important for our bodies to survive. Um, and again, I don't want to cast nets on people that are selling juices or powders, because I use some of these things. But the real important thing is to eat real food as it was intended through nature. Eat them in their whole form. Doesn't need to be raw, could be cooked, but eat them in their raw form. Vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, good fats, minimally processed stuff, because olive oil is processed, but it's minimally processed, right? Proteins and fats that are sustainably raised from sustainable farms, not conventional farms, because you are what you ate. You're a direct result of the food you're putting in your body. So nutrition is so important, man. Like, if you want to change anything, 90% of your health is diet. If you want to lose weight, just start eating healthy and walking, and watch what happens to your body. Watch what happens to your skin. Watch what happens to your mental health. Watch what happens to all your biomarkers on your lab testing during your annual physicals. You will be blown away by it, because
Yeah,
it's much simpler than people think it is. You know.
I want to dig deeper into the mental health aspect, and because this relates back to movement also.
Hmm.
There's so much talk about depression, anxiety, mental health troubles, and I feel like a lot of it ties back to what we're putting in our body and what we're doing with our body.
Yeah.
And nutrition is maybe even the more important of the two. Yeah, what else can you share about that? Like, how have mental health struggles been kind of made worse by poor nutrition and by the messages that we get about through marketing and whatnot from fast food chains, restaurants, etc. How's that been affecting people?
I feel like I could spend like days on this. So let me tell you a quick story. I was in a therapist's office many, many years ago, and I had already dove down this path and was like working on like my nutrition and fitness and stuff. And this psychiatrist says to me, there is nothing you could do naturally to change what's going on with you. You will be on medication for life. There is no cure. Well, number one, holy cow, that woman was absolutely wrong. She clearly doesn't read the research or study anything that was modern in science today. She's built by the system. She also disempowered me as a patient, or tried to disempower me as a patient, right? Because of her lack of knowledge and skill set. And then I went on to be like, I'm going to prove you fucking wrong, because it's bullshit. Science says otherwise.
Hmm.
So I want to tell you that story because nutrition has changed my life. Nutrition is very nuanced for the individual, and so is anxiety and depression and mental health. So I'm going to go upstream really quick on this and try to not lose people. Mental health is an inflammatory process. It's not a genetic process. It's an inflammatory process. And I'm talking about depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all things mental health is an inflammatory reaction. What they're caused by differs. They could be caused by traumas, emotional issues, dietary factors, environmental toxins, your the things that you're ingesting and eating, your gut dysbiosis or gut permutation. So your gut brain connection is very important. There's a lot of research on this last 10 years, looking at your microbiome and how it impacts your mind. So it's multifaceted for people. However, when you fix the gut, you fix a lot of diseases, including mental health. You do have to do some self work if you've got trauma and emotional issues that you're dealing with. You got to do the work. But nutrition is very powerful to change a lot of this because it heals the gut. And another thing to kind of mention about this when you're talking about specifically mental health and even Parkinson's, right? Because Parkinson's is a dopaminergic, it's a dopaminergic, compromised illness, right? Where you're lacking dopamine production. 60% of dopamine is produced in the gut. Almost 80% or more serotonin is produced in the gut. And then it goes into the blood-brain barrier. It's not, and this is why the science years ago of you have a neurotransmitter imbalance in the brain is complete garbage. It's a shitty old, messaging, just like LDL is the bad guy in cardiac risk, heart disease. It's old science. So you got to go upstream. You got to really dive into the holistic picture of people. And this is where functional medicine, integrative medicine, mind body get into. So the things that you directly eat have a direct correlation to the neurotransmitters that you produce, which have a direct correlation to healing, rejuvenating the body and the mind, and lowering inflammation. The goal is to lower inflammation. A good marker on your labs is HSCRP. Another good marker for people like me is MTHFR. I call it the motherfucker gene.
Easy way to remember it.
Easy way to remember it. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're compromised for life. Genetics don't play a role. Genetics play a role, but what plays a role upstream is your lifestyle habits, your nutrition, your movement, your meditation, your mindfulness, all that stuff. MTHFR mutations, almost 50% of the population have them. I was lucky enough to get a double mutation, which makes me more at risk to have issues when under stress and chronic inflammation. If I'm not methylating correctly, I'm going to have increased risks of illnesses such as cardiovascular events, dyslipidemia, mental health issues. So you want to be methylating. Well, how do you do that? Well, you eat healthy foods. You eat nourishing, nutrient-dense goodness, vegetables, fruits, proteins, fats. By the way, fat, let me go on fat real quick here. Your brain is made up of 60% fat. When they tell you you need to lower fat in your body and LDL because it makes you healthy is complete bullshit, because you need fat to help with neurotransmission in the brain. This is why people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, when they study them, they have low myelin sheath, which is the fatty tissue that insulates the neurons, the neural pathways. So if you have no insulation, you get less transmission, you get less firing and wiring. You need fat. So olive oil, omega-3 fatty acids, fatty fish, I call it the SMAC diet, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, where am I leaving off? I can't even think of it. Herring, the smash diet, herring, right? You want it, salmon, you want to be eating these things. Nuts and seeds, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, walnuts, almonds, pumpkin seeds, great for serotonin, right? Pineapple. Pineapple's great for dopamine. So these things are found in nature and they're found through our foods. And the more we start to eat these real foods, the more we start to balance out everything that's going on chemically in our body.
So many different ways I could take this.
I'm sorry, like my mind just goes and like this is all the stuff that I learned over a decade of researching this
No,
stuff.
it's amazing. It just inspires so many different thoughts. Speaking, you mentioned old science, and I just wanted to touch on um, doctors, like
Mhm.
typical, GPs, and where you
Yeah,
go to the doctor, get a physical or whatever, and they'll do your blood pressure and whatnot. But these doctors typically do not have any education or very little in nutrition, and it's never the direction they're going to take when prescribing something, right?
no,
Which to me I see as one of the single largest problems with our medical system is the
yeah,
lack of education in nutrition and holistic practices in the medical system.
yeah,
Um, what thoughts do you have on that? Is there any hope, or are the tables starting to turn because people are
yeah.
getting more and more educated on this stuff?
Yeah. So when I dove down this rabbit hole, none of this stuff was happening, right? I was reading books and reading articles and studying that was going on in the background. Now, yes, there is hope. You have companies like Function Health by Mark Hyman Partners coming out with functional lab testing for people to understand their health, which is helping with the antiquated lab systems that we have that don't really get into the real biomarkers that help you control your health. You have people like Callie Means and TrueMed who are on the forefront of talking about ultra processed food and chronic care, which has just broken our healthcare system. Right? We're a reactionary healthcare system. We're a don't do anything until things are really bad and give you these pills. The problem is I don't fault the physicians. I actually have met a lot of great, smart people in my career, and I've also met people that are not really great, right? But this the issue is upstream. The healthcare system is set in a certain way. It's a business. I think it's really hard for people to wrap their minds around this. At the end of the day, the healthcare system is a business driven on profits. And I'm not saying that to demonize them. I'm not going to take polarized approaches on if they're good or bad. I'm going to give people the real sauce. They're built for profits. Big food, built for profits. Big pharma, built for profits. Big ag, built for profits. Is it in good intention or not? I'm not going to say, maybe, maybe not. But the problem lies within the education system that's built around people that go into becoming a physician. They're taught a very small amount of nutrition, probably 4 to 6 hours, which is nothing when you think about how many hours they get talking about the biology, the function, and the pairing of pharmaceutical products that will help turn off signals or mitigate these responses or symptoms. It's symptom care. I want to be
Hmm.
very clear. There is not one pharmaceutical product yet that is built on cures. I hate to say it, but if there's cures, there's no profits. If you teach people how to be healthy, they no longer need to go to doctors' offices to see doctors to be healthy, to get pills. It's all connected to the top. More and more doctors, though, I will say this, are waking up and realizing that they're doing a disservice to their patients because they see them time and time coming back. This is a very interesting statistic. The majority of people will end up on 10 to 20 medications in the last 10 to 15 years of their life. That is insane. Insane on the healthcare costs, insane on their wallets, insane on the fact that they're decreasing quality of life through healthcare. There's a problem with that. We have more medication than we've ever had and less resolution. That's odd. So, but I want to say this. So physicians they're waking up. A lot of them are converting to functional health practices. A lot of them are incorporating functional wellness into their business and making a way to profit, uh, in a holistic way to help serve their patients. But yes, the problem is that healthcare and healthcare plans don't support the physician and the physician business to educate patients on holistic health. They incentivize them on how quick can you see people, how many billing codes can you send in, what are we going to credit you for to give, incentivize you to do. There's tiered pricing for drugs that you're going to use. It's all a controlled system based on the health care plans and the healthcare lobbyists and the people that kind of support that system. So it's broken. It's a broken system. But I do think since COVID, people have woken up. They kind of started to divide and go, just like me, there's got to be a better way. This makes no sense. People aren't getting better, they're getting worse. I saw a statistic yesterday. 97% of people in the United States are metabolically unfit.
Not too hard to believe.
97%.
That's pretty crazy.
Now you've got more medications out there, more digital therapeutic solutions out there, more nutrition. It's out there. Why are people still metabolically unwell?
Very good question.
So again, it's like all this stuff. I know I'm like a lot of the things I'm talking about can go into very deep rabbit holes, which I've gone into. Uh, but it's so broken. But there are companies that are trying to change this through getting to the root cause of chronic illness. There are tons of companies that are trying to get to the root cause of this. And I want to say this because I talked about this on another podcast, and it's probably not sexy for people. And it's probably the human condition not to address it. The real underlying truth, I think there's two parts to it. The first one is that most people will not change until they go through a catastrophic event.
Mm-hmm.
When they go through a catastrophic event or some like near-death experience or some traumatic thing, they snap, like their neurons just snap and they go, not doing that again. Like I got to change my life. That's how I changed. That's how people change when they have a heart attack. That's when people change when they get into a car accident. Like that's where people really see change. Unfortunately, the majority of people won't because they're surviving, not thriving every day, but it's not bad enough to where they think they need to make change. Even though on the outside, when you look at someone like that, you're like, oh my God, they're struggling, but they don't want to see it. They're going to continue the habits that keep them numb and keep them in their belief systems because it's easier to do that than change it. The fear of changing it, the pain of changing it's much harder. So that's one component of it. The second one is that the core part of changing anything in health has nothing to do, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, with physical things. It actually starts in the mind. You have to believe, want, visualize, see, crave change, and want to challenge your belief systems and your subconscious programming. I'm not good enough. I'll always be unhealthy. My dad had a heart attack. My mom died at 50. I'm going to get cancer because they got cancer. All of this crap that controls people to not change is really the biggest part of it. It's the brain training, the mind training. Because then when you get into that, it is so easy to become disciplined and set a program for yourself to never go back and create a lifestyle.
That is so true.
This is why people latch on to diet fads. This is why people latch on to as many consumer products as they can grab onto. Because as long as they subscribe to the fact that the solution is outside of me, it's out of my control. I can't change this about myself. I need this product to change this about myself. Without them, I'm nothing. They're going to stay there. They're going to stay there.
And it's hard to blame people for falling into that trap too, because we live in a
100%.
world, we are bombarded by advertisements all day long. And if you aren't very conscious about that, then I'm sure even if you are conscious about that on some level, it still affects your thinking. Yeah. But at least you can minimize it to some degree. But it's relentless. It's just an onslaught of messaging that you are exposed to on a daily basis. And it's got to be hard, particularly hard on those who don't realize it's happening to them.
Yes, 100%. Let me tell you this story. When I was going through my deep, dark crap at the time, one of the most important things that I got, now listen, everything I talk about, let me be clear, everything I talk about, I learned from my virtual mentors or my direct mentors, right? Through my education, self-education, self-learning. It's not mine, but it's my style in which I advocate or, put it out in the world. So I want to be clear, like these are not my ideas. These are things that I've learned. But yes, when I was going through that, one of the most important things time and time again that I came across from my virtual mentors and people that I was training under and people that I spoke to was you have to stand by the gate of your freaking mind every moment of every day. And I wasn't. I'm going to tell you right now, I wasn't. I was responding to my programming. I was reacting to the world in how I was programmed. I wasn't intentionally living my life. I was just checking boxes every day, doing what I. The minute I listened to the people telling me that, and the minute I started catching thoughts, and you have to work on it, but you start to catch the thoughts or the negative thought patterns, and then you check them. You don't fight them, but you check them. You reprogram them. This is called cognitive behavioral therapy in therapy sessions, in like the technical terms.
Mm-hmm.
But you could do this on your own. You catch the thought and you reframe the thought. You catch the automatic negative thought, or what they call ants, and you reframe the thought. Maybe it says something like, I'm never going to make enough money. I'm stupid. Maybe that's the thought, right? And then you quickly as you can, you go back and you go, yet. Or you go, or you say something like, I may not be smart enough now to make that money, but I'm doing things that'll make me smarter in the future to make that money. You go in and you start to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't do them in the head, you write them down. I had this thought. Well, what's the better thought of that? I'm gonna write this thought. Here's a different outcome. If you stand by the gate of your mind and you weed your mind, you weed all the crap out of your mind, the more you do that, the more you create new neurogenesis, new neural pathways in the mind, where your mind and thought patterns will take a better traveled route that you've created than the one you've been allowing the thoughts to go down, that trodden path. And you'll start to change your entire life because you'll look at the world in a different way. There's a famous quote by someone I followed, and Wayne Dyer. I'm blanking on names because I have all this stuff in my head. Wayne Dyer. But Wayne Dyer said this very important quote. He said, change the way you look at things, and the things that you look at change. If anybody's listening to this, think about the glasses you put on every day when you wake up in how you look at your life, your situation, your health, your relationships, your finances, whatever. How do you look at life? Now I advocate people take a step to the left, a step to the right, a step forward, or a step back, and tell me it's the same perspective.
Yeah.
Because if you go outside and look at something, or if I look at something here and I take a step, it's like photographers, right? They take a picture and they go, it's not really how, take a step to the right, boom. Did not see that perspective until I shot that. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. There's a similar quote that I love. I don't remember where it came from, but basically it's, you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are.
Yes. Yes. Because you're seeing it how you're programmed. Because one person will look at you and be like, you are so lucky.
Yeah.
To have, or to be, or to fill in the blank. And you're not thinking that. You're thinking, really wish I could do that or have that. Or how come I don't have it? You're not even focusing on everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Here's another thing that's really important that kind of daisy chains to this, that I found like super powerful for me, is gratitude is one of the most free and powerful medicines on the planet. I wake up every day since this happened to me. I wake up every day in the morning, and before I open my eyes, or as I open my eyes, and before I put my feet on the ground, I say 3 things in my mind that I'm grateful for. Massive effect on your brain chemistry. Massive effect. It could be the simplest things. Oh, I'm so grateful for this cozy bed I got to lay on for 8 hours. Oh, I'm so grateful for the sun coming through my window. I'm so grateful that, the nice weather, whatever. So grateful to have these clothes on my back. I'm so grateful to have my family around me. I'm so grateful to have food, shelter, and water, which a lot of people in third world countries don't have any of those.
Yeah.
So like gratitude for me, like when I started doing that, which I never did, by the way, I was always worried about what I didn't have. When I started thinking about what I did have, I was like, whoa, holy shit.
That's it. It's avoiding the trap of the scarcity mindset and focusing on what on the abundance that's all around us.
Abundance.
Look out your window and you'll see like a billion blades of grass on the ground. You know, there's abundance everywhere.
Yeah. There's I don't know if anybody's listening to this, like, and you're struggling with some of the stuff that we're talking about. Like, one of the things that helped me was to walk, meditate, and do the gratitude practice. So as I walk, I would say, man, I'm so grateful for these two legs that I can walk on my own 2 feet. Oh, I'm so grateful that I can touch my nose and swat away that bug that landed on my, you go through and you start to name off the things that you have on your body. Oh, I'm so grateful to have these two eyes to be able to see nature in its entirety and experience life as it is. I'm so grateful for both my ears to hear the sounds of nature around me and to be able to listen and talk to people and communicate. These are ways that people can really pull themselves out of some crap because they'll realize, holy shit, I probably have it better than 95% of people. Right.
Rich, I am grateful to have had this conversation with you. Truly.
Likewise.
I have so much more to say, but we don't really have any more time. So I think a part two is going to be in order for sure.
Please, I am I am a teacher, educator, and motivator and inspirer at heart. That's why I'm doing this. I just to share because I know we're going long, but like the reason why I created Vital Habits, the reason why I created Wiseman before this is because why the heck should I get all this knowledge that I've learned that has improved my own life and keep it to myself? Other people should know about this stuff. If I could help people learn to tap into themselves, yes, should you go seek help? Yeah. Do you need a provider? Yeah. But there are things you could do in your own life to change it on your own. And I'm just so compelled to do that, like help people figure this stuff out. And that's why I do this. Like, so I'm more than happy to get on a part two, a part three. I'm happy to do whatever people want to ask me questions and I'll give answers.
That's so great. It's so important that you're doing stuff like this, and we need more people like you who are, trying to help and spread those messages because you can't get enough of it. You really can't.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I'll shout it from the rooftops as long as I can. Someone says it's not your passion, it's your calling.
Mhm.
This is my calling.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Let the audience know where they can reach you and where they can find you and what they should check out.
absolutely. So thevitalhabits.com. Thevitalhabits.com is my website. On there, you'll also find my newsletter to sign up for, which every Friday I drop actionable, easy tips for you to implement in your life. And I also offer a free lab work cheat sheet because I've worked in this industry for 20 plus years. I know the diagnostic testing and the things you need to look for. So you could download that cheat sheet for free, which will help you start to make changes in your health with your provider. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram at The Vital Habits. And you could ping me on an email. I'm on YouTube. I'm starting to put up some YouTube stuff, and my goal is to start getting that content out there as well. So
Amazing. Well, I encourage everybody to check out your stuff. We will do this again. We've only made it through 3 out of 8 pillars, so there's a lot more to say. We could have done an entire episode just on nutrition because that alone is
100%,
so
100%.
deep. But I super appreciate your time. It's wonderful to speak with you. Great to meet you. And yeah, we got to do this again. So
Likewise. Can I add one more thing?
yeah, for sure.
If anybody's interested, I do offer one-on-one coaching, lifestyle coaching for people that want to really dig into their own personal things. I also do corporate wellness and public speaking. So if people want to bring me into their group, their company, their environment, their team, whatever, I do these types of educational talks and even exercises for people to start making movements in their own health. And then lastly, I consult in health tech, consumer devices, because I'm obviously in wearable space and health consumer space. So I consult in that as well. So I just want to put that out there so people know what I do in case you're like, well, how can he help me? And that's what I do. So reach out if you're interested.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Rich, and we'll do this again soon.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you.
You too.